One sunny afternoon in 1971, a 10-year-old girl named Carmen Colon is running a simple errand for her grandmother in Rochester, New York. She stops at a pharmacy, but the prescription isn't ready. She leaves, promising to return. That small, mundane delay was the last moment of normalcy for her family and the city. What happened next was a crime so brazen, so public, and so chillingly ignored by dozens of witnesses that it would launch one of the most infamous and enduring unsolved mysteries in American history. This is the story of Carmen Colon, Wanda Walkovich, and Michelle Meanza, three young lives extinguished by a killer who chose his victims by their initials, and the killings became known as the Alphabet Murders. Before we dive into the details of this tragic case, remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Calendar of Crime. And be sure to check out our in-depth case files, coming soon to Substack. Link is in the description. The date was November 16, 1971. Carmen Colon, a bright and energetic fourth grader, was on her way home from the pharmacy when she vanished. Her family reported her missing to the Rochester Police Department just 3 hours later. But in the hours between her leaving the store and the official report, something horrific unfolded in broad daylight. On a local interstate, a dark Ford Pinto was seen backing up frantically, trying to run down a young girl half naked and flailing her arms for help. An individual then overpowered her and violently threw her back into the car. The most shocking detail? Approximately 38 motorists witnessed this apparent abduction, yet not a single person stopped or called the police. The collective failure of those witnesses remains a haunting footnote to the case, a stark reminder of the bystander effect in a moment of crisis. For 2 agonizing days, the search for Carmen continued. Then, on November 18th, 2 teenagers made a gruesome discovery. Carmen's body was found nearly 12 miles from the interstate where she was last seen struggling, dumped in a culvert near the town of Riga. The medical examiner's report confirmed the brutality of the attack. Carmen had been raped, her skull fractured, and the cause of death was strangulation, notably, strangulation from the front. The initial investigation was massive, but the true horror was only beginning to reveal itself. For nearly 2 years, the murder of Carmen Colon remained an isolated, terrifying tragedy. Then, in the spring of 1973, the fear returned. On April 2, 1973, Wanda Walkovich, an 11-year-old girl, disappeared after leaving her home in Rochester to walk to a nearby store. Unlike Carmen, Wanda's disappearance was not witnessed by dozens of people, but the outcome was tragically similar. 9 days later, on April 11th, her body was discovered in a secluded area off State Route 104 in the town of Webster, New York. The distance between the discovery sites of Carmen and Wanda was significant, yet the parallels were undeniable. Wanda, like Carmen, had been sexually assaulted and strangled. However, a key difference was noted by investigators and later by profilers. Wanda was strangled from the back. This subtle but critical distinction would later lead some experts to believe that Wanda and the third victim were killed by one person, while Carmen's murder may have involved a different individual or a partner. The media, noticing the double initials Carmen Colon, CC, and Wanda Walkovich, W, immediately dubbed the killer the Alphabet Killer, or the double initial killer. The city of Rochester had barely begun to process the second murder when the killer struck again just 7 months later. On November 26, 1973, Michelle Meanza, also 11 years old, was abducted. Michelle was last seen near her home in Rochester. Her body was found 2 days later, on November 28th, in a ditch in the town of Macedon, New York. Michelle's murder completed the terrifying pattern. Like the 2 girls before her, her initials matched Mem. She had been sexually assaulted, and she had been strangled from the back, mirroring the method used on Wanda Walkovich. The discovery of Michelle's body confirmed the existence of a serial killer operating in the Rochester area, a monster who seemed to be choosing his victims based on a bizarre alliterative signature. The fear in the community was palpable. Parents kept their children indoors, and the police were under immense pressure to solve the case before the killer could claim a 4th victim. The investigation into the Alphabet Murders was one of the largest in Rochester's history. The unique pattern led investigators to consider a killer obsessed with the alphabet, perhaps even inspired by Agatha Christie's novel, The ABC Murders. The police followed countless leads, including tips about a dark Ford Pinto, and interviewed hundreds of potential suspects. Over the decades, several key theories and suspects have emerged. The single killer theory. This theory posits that one person committed all three murders, with the difference in strangulation technique being a minor variation or a learning curve. The matching initials and the disposal sites, all starting with the victim's initials, Colon in Riga, Wachowicz in Webster, Mainza in Macedon, strongly suggest a single meticulous offender. The two-killer theory. Based on the difference in strangulation, front versus back, and the witness accounts of two adults involved in Carmen's abduction, some profilers believe that Carmen's murder was a separate crime, or that the killer had an accomplice for the first murder but acted alone for the subsequent two. Kenneth Bianchi, the infamous Hillside Strangler, grew up in Rochester and was a classmate of a true crime writer who investigated the case. However, he was never definitively linked to the Alphabet murders. Joseph Nasso. The most chilling coincidence involves Joseph Nasso, a West Coast serial killer convicted in 2013 as the Alphabet Killer for the murders of 6 women in California. 3 of his victims had alliterative names, and one was even named Carmen Lorraine Colon. Despite the eerie similarities, Nasso was never definitively linked to the Rochester cases, and he denied any involvement. The consensus among investigators is that the alliterative names may have simply been a coincidence, as such names were popular at the time. Despite the massive effort, the case went cold. However, the hope for justice was reignited with the advent of modern forensic science. The most crucial piece of evidence lies in the case of Wanda Wachowicz. DNA evidence was recovered from the scene and has been preserved. This evidence has been tested and retested over the years, leading to the exclusion of numerous suspects. The existence of this viable DNA sample means that the killer of Wanda and Michelle, assuming they are the same, is one test away from being identified, should their profile be in a database, or if a familial match is found through genetic genealogy. The case of Carmen Colon is more challenging. The initial crime scene was less controlled, and the possibility of multiple assailants complicates the DNA picture. Law enforcement continues to pursue leads, hoping that advances in DNA technology or a deathbed confession will finally bring closure to the families. The case files are still open, a constant reminder of the 3 young lives lost and the monster who walked free. Carmen Colon, Wanda Wachowicz, and Michelle Mainza were more than just statistics or initials in a killer's pattern. They were daughters, sisters, and friends whose lives were tragically cut short. Their story is a grim historical marker, a moment when the innocence of a community was shattered. It is also a story of resilience, the resilience of the families who have fought for decades for answers, and the resilience of the investigators who refused to close the book on this case. The calendar of crime remembers these girls not just for the horror of their deaths, but for the lives they lived and the justice their families still deserve. What are your thoughts on the Alphabet murders? Do you believe the killer was a single individual, or were there 2 separate monsters operating in Rochester? Do you think the DNA evidence will finally lead to an arrest? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.